Thanks, those of you who got an invite. Welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to episode 85 of the Wild Eye Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to Pinnacle Entertainment's savage worlds, aimed at beginners like me and veterans alike Eric Lamoureux, the veteran Aruski. What's going on there, sweet cheeks?
It's going busy. It's crunch time with Con on the Cob and crunch time with Wise Guys, so I've been pretty busy. How about you guys?
Who do you mean, guys? It's just me and you here. There's nobody else here.
Are we going to bleep his name again?
That's awesome. What's happening, Paris?
Salty Gary.
I'm not
sorry
salty.
I didn't mention your name, man.
Yeah, I thought we were friends, bro. What's going on here?
We are friends. We're definitely friends.
Cool.
Good, man. Busy. I'm very, very busy. Very busy. And I've been doing the last 2 weeks with a busted arm. So on the last podcast that I was on, the Wild Dog, because you didn't mention me in that one, I'm just saying. I actually did that recording with a busted arm, and I went to the emergency room after that. That's how dedicated I am to this podcast.
Yeah.
And,
where were you, Gary? Huh?
Yeah, Gary.
Guy showed up with a broken arm, and you weren't there.
What was I doing? Oh,
You were on a holiday hunting.
hell yeah, I was. It was top notch, dude. It was 100% freaking wicked. We went on a 50K quad ride around the mountains, through some creeks, over some hills. Yeah, it was full on like Deadlands Wild West. I had my gun out there. I was blasting things, doing
That's not
stuff.
an adventure. Do you want to know an adventure?
No.
An adventure is when you're rushing to get back to watch the football and you go, man, I don't want to wear these jeans anymore. I want to put on some shorts. So you rip off your jeans and you got to put your shorts on, and your stupid dog comes along and you're trying to dodge it. So you're not looking, and you end up putting both feet in the same pant leg. And then you go ass up and fall on the ground and bust your arm. And then next morning you do a podcast in pain. That's an adventure.
Wow. You actually broke your arm just by falling over on the ground?
I didn't. Well, actually, I haven't broken my arm. What happened was, because it's typical me, it has to be an amazingly weird story. So after I had that fall on the Saturday night and I went to bed and then got up Sunday morning and did the podcast, I then go to the doctor or to the hospital, and they x-ray it and they're looking at it. And my wife and I are sitting in the like little cubicle where they put you. And I'm looking at this doctor looking at the screen, and he looks all confused, and he calls over a colleague, and then he calls over a second colleague. And I'm like, oh no, it's broken. Like, I'm going to have to get surgery, because if you get a break in your top part of your arm, you got to get a pin, right? And I'm like, no, I don't want surgery. I don't have time for surgery. And the dude walks back and he goes, that is the weirdest scan I've ever seen. And my wife just looks at me and goes, of course it is. It's your scan. I'm like, thanks, honey. And it turns out that it looked like it was fractured, but they sent me for a CT scan. And it turns out that because I broke my arm as a kid, the thing they picked up was an old fracture. But when a bone gets broken, it builds calcium over the top to make it stronger. And what they suspect has happened is it's got a bone spur in there. And so when I fell, I actually cut the muscle from the inside, which is what caused all the bruising. And so they're waiting for that to heal, but it's been 2 weeks and it hasn't healed yet. So I may have to get surgery after all, where they're going to take the spur out. So there you go. That's my amazing story. While you're off having a holiday, I was sitting here in pain doing the Wild Eye podcast.
Wow.
For the fans, Guy. For the fans.
Wow. Screw the fans. I feel like the fans of this podcast are like the players in my game. Screw them.
All right, let's get on with the show. So we have a new blog on the Nerds International Network. That's right. Our good friend, he keeps writing to us on the show, Conrad Erasmus Neubert, has this blog called Religiously Odd Spots. So if you don't know Conrad, he's a Lutheran minister. And in this blog, he shares tidbits on random pieces of pop culture and mostly role-playing games. And his views are really interesting. He's very interesting character, I would say.
Is he a Lex Lutheran minister?
I'd say what you did there.
I think he's going to smite you for this one.
That's all right. Smite away, sucker.
He's got an interesting article on why it's good to play bad and why we should all play criminals in a role-playing game. And he just happens to mention Wise Guys. Or did you write that? No, the Wise Guys. He wrote the article. I was like, hang on, there's a picture of Eric. It's actually Eric. This is another person. This is Eric's secret blog. This is his pseudonym.
I feel like I'm going to have a word with Conrad. He's probably like, the Wild Eye podcast with Eric Lamoureux and Paris Conte.
Gary, this show is nothing without you. I can go, no one will blink, but without you, bro, it's nothing.
That makes me feel a little bit better. Thanks for rubbing my ego. Is that how you call it? What you say? No.
Stroking your ego.
There it is.
The term.
Can you rub it? Not with your broken arm?
Rub it. We can rub
Last
your...
thing we need is you to have an erect ego.
Your head top will rub your head top.
I mean, it's been 3 years of doing this podcast almost, and I got to say, every Sunday every time we record anyway, I'm fairly turgid, so...
Okay, all right, and check it out. We'll have a link to his blog.
Straight after a blog spot by a minister. I'm a bit turgid. Not sure we're getting the right thing going here, Gary, but okay.
I mentioned earlier, Calling on the Cob. It's in 2 weeks, actually less than 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, it will be over, October 3rd. And of course, we'll be there, and our very own Harrison Hunt has 2 panels at this convention. One on podcasting that we'll hopefully record and should be released as an episode for the Wild Eye podcast, and the other one is about weird RPGs. And Gary and I are part of the podcast one, and then the one on weird RPGs, I know I'll probably go in there and heckle him a little bit. Maybe I'll record that one too.
Wait, what? We're doing a thing?
Yeah, we're doing a panel at Calling on the Cob on podcasting.
Wow. Have you
missed the memo, huh? No, you didn't. You just don't remember.
No, I think the problem is nobody sent it to me because I'm not part of the podcast. That's kind of the theme of this show. All right. Anyways, hey, I did see the Toff Guys cover. The Toff Guys cover was put up on MeWe the other day, and man, does it ever look good. That's freaking sweet. The bullet for the O on Toff is top notch. I'm excited.
Thanks. Yeah, that's Carl Kiesler that did the cover for us. And Tough Guys is just like a little spin-off, a source book for Wise Guys that Harrison's been writing. And about London gangsters. It's going to be amazing. So, we got the cover for that. And Harrison's going to run 2 games at Calling on the Cob, one on Friday and one on Saturday there. So if you're going and you haven't signed up yet, well, go ahead and sign up. I think there's still a couple spots left, and I'll be running Wise Guys too on Saturday. Basically, Harrison and I are going to be running Wise Guys and Tough Guys at the same time in the same room, that little Savage Rolls room up there by the restaurant, at the back of the restaurant. So
nice.
We'll take over.
Are you doing it up like last year with all of your little minis and stuff like that? Is that all going to be for your Wise Guys game again? I sure am, yeah. Like I said, it's crunch time. I'm putting the last touches, the last little minis together for that, and it's going to be epic. Yeah, you got to post those pictures again or repost them. For those of you that aren't aware, you should have seen the stuff that Eric did last year. It was fantastic. I actually even remember stating that Carl Kiesler, you're going to give him a run for his money. And I'm just currently sitting here thinking, I think I'm going to call you Carl's Jr. from now on. Hey, I'll take that as a compliment. The guy's a legend. So. Cool stuff, man. All right, let's move on to some news.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the news. The news is incoming. Prepare yourself for the news. News! And some announcements about the Nerds International Network and the Wild Die podcast.
So, Pinnacle announced in their Pinnacle post recently that while they're rebooting Deadlands, I mean, that's not really news, but now they're saying next year's coming up. But what they revealed is that there's going to be a little bit of change with the whole meta plot in there for Deadlands. And I've seen people on Facebook get all crazy about that announcement because the Confederates won't be part of that history anymore. It sounds like war doesn't need the Confederate Army to sow fear anymore. There's enough factions in there to take care of that. And it's explained in the game with the Morgana effect. And to understand that, you would have to read the Cackler graphic novel, which is excellent, by the way. So basically, it's like a butterfly effect from the Dark Ages that affects the history, the current history. So it's going to change that. I think that's interesting. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, there's that. And Lost Colony, too, that was announced kickstarting in October.
Nice. Hey,
that's a sci-fi one.
I got a question for you here, because now that we talked about it pre-show, but I was a touch confused there. So the Confederates are they rewriting the actual full-on core Deadlands material, like the original Deadlands Reloaded for Savage Worlds, rewriting it and taking out the
yes.
Confederates?
Yes.
Oh.
Basically, previously Deadlands began. Well, the alternate history of Deadlands began at that. What's the name of that big battle in Pennsylvania? Whatever, I can't think of the name right. Gettysburg, which was like in the 1860s or something like that. But now the alternate history begins in 1841 at a battle. And I mean, I'm no expert in U.S. history, but I think that was basically before the Confederate Army was big and important, or even part of history. I'm sure some people will correct me on that, but yeah, they're a non-factor anymore. They say that there's still going to be a separation between the South and the North, but it won't be because of the Confederate Army anymore. So,
So, do we know why Shane has made this decision?
Well, from what I read, because he made a big Facebook post about that because people were freaking out, and he says, well, he's been running Deadlands all around the world, and it always becomes a bit as a sensitive issue when slavery comes up and these things, and maybe it's a sign of our time where we're not as tolerant. We can't dissociate reality from fiction anymore. I don't know, but yeah, I think that's what has a lot of people really angry about this, is that it feels like he's pandering to a faction of the gaming community that's a bit more sensitive about certain issues. So
I haven't played Deadlands, but the Confederate Army in Deadlands it's not glorified, is it? Like I guess what I'm asking is that I'm assuming you could play a Confederate soldier, an ex-Confederate soldier, but it's not glorifying within the context of the setting, what they were fighting for or anything like that, does it?
I didn't get that sense from reading Deadlands.
No.
Okay. You bring up an interesting point, and it's a debate for maybe another topic, and one that we'd have to be very careful of, and especially like if you think about the industry that I work in, that we have to be very careful about how we bring up concepts and how we talk about them. I guess one of my fears is that if we start sanitizing history, we don't learn from the past. If we remove things from our lexicon, or we're in a position now where we're 100 years away from World War II and World War I, and it could be argued that right now a lot of things that we're seeing today reflect those times, and because there's been such a big gap and we haven't sort of looked at what people have fought for or the ideals that were held a long time ago, we're doomed to repeat ourselves. So I'm just, this isn't a go at Shane or Pinnacle. It just sounds weird that we would convert a whole system to take an element of human history out.
Right. And I don't disagree with you, but this isn't a history book. It's an RPG book.
Yeah, no, and that's a very fair point. Shane wants, because it's his setting and he can do what he likes.
It's his baby. That's basically what he said. It's my baby, and I'll do whatever I want with it.
It must.
I agree.
He must be aware of the ramifications of this. He's he's a smart man, and I'm sure he's going to lose sales and stuff. But I think he'd lose sales either way, whether he left it in or didn't take it out. If he left it in or took it out, someone was going to not buy it because of it. It's it's a pretty interesting time we live in where politics has entered gaming. It's
topic for another show.
Morality and stuff like that.
You and your I had this conversation with Matthew the other day. We were talking about it, and he said the same thing. If we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And I'm like, that's a bunch of philosophical mumbo jumbo. I guarantee you that as a society, let's take your example of slavery. We're never going to have slaves again. We still currently do have slaves and stuff like that. Like I know that it's happening, right? But never on the level that we once had it. You're never going to see that. Philosophically, we've become way more evolved. And you know what? Actually, the next slaves are going to be robots anyway. So who really gives a rat's about those guys?
Well,
those
we could argue that all of us on wages are slaves, but that's a whole
true.
Other
it's a philosophical mumbo jumbo. That's cool. And as far as Deadlands goes, I've played a lot of Deadlands. It actually even says in the beginning of the book, like we know there was slavery and stuff like that. Just kind of ignore it, pretend that it didn't happen. It doesn't need to be in your games because none of the stuff in Deadlands is actually really about slavery. It's killing giant worms and crazy Wendigos and stuff like that, right? So.
Yeah, like I was telling my friends, I mean, I don't think it ever. I probably ran Deadlands like for 12 sessions at least, and it never came up really. The whole conflict between Confederate Army and the North. To me, that's not why you play Deadlands anyway.
Mm-hmm. So the old Lost Colony, that's actually pretty sweet. I was taking a peek through some of that stuff. This takes place after the Hell on Earth stuff, and they're going to redo all of that stuff too. So there is this was written in 2002, and essentially what happened is I guess Hellstrom somewhere along the way created some kind of interdimensional transportational time tunnel thing that he created that basically made a portal to, I wouldn't say another universe, but another place called the Faraway. And then while they were there was ghost rock there, so they started mining it. And I guess some things happened back on Earth, in Hell on Earth, and the portal got closed, and so now you're this lost colony. And I'm like, you can actually, come to think of it, I looked up the price on drive-thru, $4.99, regular $25. But this is the old D20 system, not the Savage World system, and it actually looks pretty good, man. You got some of these. It's kind of like what's the movie with the blue cats? With the space, you got the space on one side, nature on the other. It has a bit of a feel of that to it, which is kind of cool.
No idea.
All right, well, thanks for nothing, buddy. Appreciate you helping me out there.
Blue Cats.
Never heard of it. Yeah, Blue Cats.
You're talking about Avatar? No.
Avatar, that's the one. Thanks, pal.
Oh.
See?
Blue Cats.
Blue Cats. I remember Blue People.
Oh, they were cat people, man. They have tails and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, I can see it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie. But yeah, this actually looks pretty good, man. This is going to be like a Deadlands futuristic space stuff, mixed in with a little bit of Wild West tropes and stuff. And I'm pretty excited for that. That's kind of cool. Neat.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get the writer on the show for that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I miss John. I love that guy.
Yeah, that's the guy that you learned that there's someone out there that wants to do 8 actions in a round at minus 15 or something like that. Yeah,
that's what bennies are for.
Scary. Another announcement too from Pinnacle. It's a B series for ETU. So people that have been waiting years for more material for ETU, well, it's gonna happen. It's called Pine Box Perils. Sounds good.
You got the when and where on this one? Because I couldn't find any information about it.
No, they're always vague on release dates, but yeah.
Yeah. What about this?
Also,
Rippers stuff, man. Is there any
yeah.
new Rippers stuff coming?
Skipped right over
Yeah.
top of that one.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, Ripper's Resurrected. It's the Expedition Amazon, and apparently it's got a fun expedition system in there, and that they're going to exploit with more adventures. I have no idea how it works, how good it is. I haven't bought it, but looks interesting.
Wow. Come on,
Reminds
Eric.
me of the Mythos. Reminds me of the Mythos expedition for Trail of Cthulhu, where it's all managing resources during the expedition and stuff like that. Maybe it's different because it's Savage Worlds, but yeah.
I think what's going on here? We are the Wild Eye Podcast. We are a Savage Worlds podcast, and you don't even know what's going on with this stuff. Am I going to have to replace you with David Scott, mister?
I know I'm going to have to hang up my microphone here.
Wow. So, right? Well, you've been busy doing Wise Guys, so I mean, come on now. There is a free supplement that you can get right from Peg Inc., and it goes through expeditions, how to run them. It gives you expedition goals, so map an area, maybe that's your expedition goal. Discover a new species, rescue a lost party, make first contact, roll on the old D6 Dice-A-Roni, and then it has some stuff on running the expedition. So if you want to do things like making a survival roll or something like that, when you get whoever's leading the party makes a survival roll to navigate through like the rough terrain and stuff like that. So there's rolls for that. Expending supplies, drawing expedition cards. You're like, what's an expedition card? Well, let me tell you what an expedition card is, my main man. There's also rules for making camps and encounters, which is pretty sweet. Paranoia, different things like that. Hirelings. And then at the very end of this PDF, you got some cards. Now, I'm assuming you print these bad boys out. And when it says time to draw a card, you just flip a card over and you get things like maybe you flip over a hazard. The environment turns dangerous, roll on the hazard table. You flip over, this one's actually pretty cool, ambush. Creatures or enemies attack from ambush. So you roll on the enemy table, but the creature attacks with surprise. They got other cards in here that are going to do things like maybe you find like a supply stash that was left by an old group or something like that, or you'll flip a card that says like expend supplies for X amount of supplies or something like that. And then they got some little cards for your henchmen, for the people carrying your stuff, for your guides, the bearers, your mule teams and whatnot. It's pretty sweet. 12 pages of running an expedition goodness. What do you think of that?
Well, thanks a lot, Gary. I don't care what Paris says about you. I mean, you're pretty good.
What has that guy contributed to the show? Not that good stuff.
Apparently, the print version of that ships in October.
Yeah, this is a free PDF that you can get. The Amazon Expeditions book is actually like a plot point campaign for Rippers. It takes place in the Amazon, and this is just a little PDF side thing for running expeditions that you can get right now for free.
But if you get the printed one, you get bonus jokers for your action deck.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's fancy. So Gary, since you're Mr. Know-It-All today, what's going on with Riffs? Isn't there a new, the latest playtest that came out?
Yep, they've actually what is it called? We just talked about it. I forgot what it was called. It's called Banes
Blood and Bane.
Blood and Banes.
Blood and
dude, you could play a vampire. You could play a freaking vampire. They got Knights of the White Rose. You could be Sasquatch if you want. World's hide and seek champion right there. Vampires are really actually kind of funny because you're so powerful, but yet you've got all of these things that you're weak to, like garlic. Here, I gotta hold this flower up to you, and you're gonna cower like a. But I was just saying to Uncle Jay, I'm like, man, couldn't you just play a Knight of the White Rose? You have Holy Whiz, and you just make a pistol and fill it up with your whiz, and you could just go around shooting vampires with your pistol.
Well, if you were trying to sell me on the riffs, I think you failed there. Yeah.
Wow. Come on, Lamoureux. There's so many cool things that you can do inside of this bad boy. It's top notch. It's excellent. Yeah, the Blood and Banes book is really good. There's dinosaurs. There's a bunch of stuff on Vancouver or in BC. And the Zydakicks, you can get Zydakick armor. So you can have like bug armor and stuff like that covering your face up. And yeah, it's excellent. Come on. You got to get with the times. I'm going to go down and we're talking ChupacabraCon down in Austin, Texas, or something like that. We'll go down there, meet up with Sean Robertson, and we'll play some Savage Riffs with like a true champion.
Sounds good. I'm game for that.
Awesome.
And finally, last episode, the bonus episode, we had JC Thompson on the show to talk about Gods and Masters. So the Gods and Masters Kickstarter campaign is launching on Tuesday, September 24th. Take a look at our last episode for an interview with creator JC Thompson for all the details of the setting. Backers who pledge $10 or more will get access to the beta of the player's guide and can get started running their own adventures right away. So yeah, it's basically fantasy with a guerrilla warfare twist to it. Very well put together. So check it out. By the time the episode is out, the Kickstarter might be launched already. So
very cool. That $10 that gets you the PDF, that PDF, we actually had a chance to take a look at it. And it is like, we did mention, if you listen to the last one, it's like 95% completed. There's a little bit of artwork and a table of contents that needs to be slammed in there. But $10 will get you that right out of the gate, which is pretty cool. Way better than what you got with Wise Guys. We have to wait months for like just a sneak peek of some cover art.
We've been slacking, but yeah, we just Morna just finished the layout today actually, so we're proofreading it and should be out shortly after that. We're waiting on a couple pieces of artwork though, but that's about it.
So I never check Kickstarter after I've backed, like for the, have people have all their comments and stuff. Are you getting slammed on Kickstarter at the moment? Like, where's my shit? Can my books?
No, because I promised it for September, and it's still September, and it's going to come out in September. So,
dude, it's like what, 8-9 days left in September?
Yeah.
Yep.
What's going on here, Lamoureux? You said September, and you got 10 days and a convention coming up. When are we getting our stuff?
Yeah.
September 31st.
Like the edge, bro. That's not what we meant. Come on.
Yeah, 31st at 11:59 p.m.
Is that
You
Australian
can't call me
American time? Because
American time.
Your time, you've broken your promise to me, Lamoureux. That's all I'm saying. That's October for me, bro.
Yeah, I know, but nobody cares about Australia anyway.
Oh, come on. That's it. War.
War. I'll send an emu after you.
How many days are there in September? There's 31 days, isn't there? Or 30?
So.
Do you know? It's not like that old gimmick where you're like, yeah, I promised to have it delivered by February 30th.
Yeah. 30 days in September.
So we're going to get it by the 31st then.
September.
Yeah. 32nd.
Nice. You just keep my copy. Save yourself some postage. I'll pick it up when I see you at the con. Bring your pencil because I want a signature.
Yeah, I won't be ready for calling a cob, unfortunately.
Refund.
Well, the print copy won't be ready. Anyway, so today for the show, I thought we'd talk about traps, trap encounters in general. So we're gonna take it to the edge.
Yeah. You're listening to the Wild Die Podcast. 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 Listen 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 to the Wild Die Podcast.
You're listening to Wild Die Podcast. You're listening to Wild Die Podcast.
It's very catchy when you listen to the real tune, not so much when you do it.
So when you say traps, Eric, are you talking about like when someone comes to you and goes, hey, would you like to be a guest on my podcast? Are you talking about like that sort of trap?
Well, that one worked. You've been entangled for over a year now.
Somebody keeps failing their escape roll.
And I've failed my strength roll.
Yeah, so traps, and I know people might be thinking, that's that's just fantasy, but I think it includes more than just a fantasy genre. Because you're thinking pit traps and dart traps, poison, all these staples of fantasy tropes. But I kind of, I wouldn't say butted my head against, but I was looking for answers in the core rules when I was designing Wise Guys, because I want car bombings to be a big part of Wise Guys. It was part of history. And so I was looking at ways to handle it and seeing if I would need setting rules, because the core rules at first glance really didn't give me answers. But I found a couple things. I asked around, asked my buddy David Scott what he thought and how I should handle it. And we came up with something. But that said, I think we should talk about how we would run it.
Wait,
what's that, Paris?
You didn't ask Gary?
I'm not his
Went
buddy.
straight to David.
Yeah, I'm not his pal. Why would he ask me?
That?
Well, Gary would have asked David Scott anyway. That's what he does when he doesn't know.
Okay.
Quick, David.
Out the middleman.
Quick, David. Eric's asking me a question. I need an answer.
So it's not spelled out word for word in core, but there are tidbits in there that can be used with traps. But first, I guess I want to ask you guys. So, I mean, you guys are both coming from D&D, and these games have like passive perception scores that you can kind of look up. Because basically in a trap encounter, you can't expect a player to be asking every 1 meter, is there a trap here? Is there a trap here? There's a trap here. And then roll perception or notice, and it doesn't make sense. Yet you don't want to just have the player walk into the trap without him having a way to avoid it somehow, right? You don't want to be the, oh, you didn't tell me, so now, take 6 D12 damage. I'm such a clever GM, right?
Why don't you want to be that guy? That guy sounds awesome.
Sounds like a jerk.
I want to play with that guy.
You bring up an interesting point, though, with traps. Although I have to ask, Eric, what is the point of having a 10-foot pole to buy if you're not going to do that?
I was going to say.
Yeah, that's what you want. You want your players to be going like an inch at a round, like tapping everything.
Yeah, that sounds like a very exciting game right there.
That's exactly how it's done.
That actually brings up an interesting point about trap, because if I cast my mind back into the annals of time, back to the 80s when I was first in D&D, traps were a big thing because dungeons were a big thing. And there's a part of me that's always believed that traps are part of the lexicon of the GM, the adversarial GM, the GM that wants to win, right? And something that's always stuck in my throat is a dungeon full of traps with things living in it that don't set off their own traps. I guess what I'm saying is traps have to have a reason for being there. And as you've pointed out, if there's too many or they're set up in such a way that they're uber deadly and they don't make a lot of sense, that's just becoming, it just slows the game down and becomes very adversarial. So the first question before you even get anywhere near the rules is, why is the trap there? Why have you put that in your setting, whether it's fantasy or modern or futuristic? That trap has a purpose. Someone stopped and went, there's a threat that's going to come through here. I need to stop it or delay it or destroy it. That's why this trap's going in there. And I'm sure all of us that have played fantasy role-playing games in the past have seen specially designed splat books on traps, and some of the traps in there are just absolutely over the top. Like, why anyone would spend all that time building this stupid trap in this decrepit old dungeon to protect 12 gold pieces is just beyond me.
Grimtooth.
Yeah. You got to think that 12 gold pieces way back when this trap was being created was like $1 million.
Well, there is that, but why wouldn't you take the $1 million with you? Why would you leave it behind?
Well, he died. They're dead. That's why.
Yeah. Here's a new show topic: inflation in dungeons.
That's right. Well, actually, I don't agree with what's written in this adventure. This was written back in the 80s. This is 500 gold pieces. I believe by today's inflation, I shall have my own kingdom. Thank you very much. You know,
Yeah. See, the guy could use his calculator. Well, actually, in 2019, this would be worth 1,283 gold pieces.
Have you noticed lately Eric's been doing that voice and like picking on people that like calculators? I don't know what the story is there.
Lately, he's just a man of many voices. I'm impressed. Usually, he doesn't do any. You ever play a game with him? I mean, he's very.
Question back at you, Mr. Lemaroo. Why do you want car bombs in Wise Guys, and how do you see them being used? Take the rules out. What is it that you want to? Obviously, they're a trap to kill a bad guy, but how do you see it working in a game sense? How do you see it being used so that you're not just being that adversarial GM? So some bloke wants to go, gets up in the middle of the night, goes, "I need to get a taco," jumps to the car, boom. All right, that's it. Thanks, hand me your character sheet.
Well, yeah, that was the question, really, because if there's a bomb in your car, that means someone wants you dead, obviously, and he probably went through a lot of trouble and care to make sure that you can't see it, and it would almost be an instant kill, or at least maybe 3d6 damage for the explosion right off the bat. But one of the inspiration for the car bomb in Wise Guys came from the movie Casino.
I knew you were going to say Casino.
And what's interesting about that sequence is that something goes wrong with the bomb, where there was actually a plate under the seat, a steel plate under the seat, that pushed all the explosion out through the dashboard. Then you could see flames first, and that gave the occupant enough time to exit the vehicle before it just blows up. So instead of relying on notice or perception, just see that there's a bomb, it's more about evasion, and we'll get to the evasion rules in Savage Worlds. So David and I kind of danced around that rule there, the evasion, where, okay, unless you ask for it and you perform a search around the vehicle or under the vehicle, you're not going to see the bomb. There's just no way for you to see it and notice it. So, but yet I didn't want to be like that button, that I win button, that, oh, well, you didn't tell me you were searching the car, so now, poof, you're dead. Ha ha ha. But so yeah, it's all about the narration of that sequence for the car bomb. It could be something left behind by the explosive expert. Maybe he left a tiny screwdriver right by the gas pedal, and you see it just at the last minute. Oh, something's wrong. And then just as you turn on the ignition and now you jump out of the vehicle, you tell the others. So it becomes you avoiding the blast, basically. So that's one way. That's the way we suggest in Wise Guys to handle it. But that's a bit different than what the rest of the rules talk about with the other aspects that we'll get to also. But yeah, it's one way to handle it with still leaving a chance for the character to get out of the way.
I suppose the trap itself is supposed to be deadly, or at least in most instances that's why it's created. From a game master's point of view, I don't like to use traps in a deadly sense because of how much finality it can bring to your game. So in a fantasy setting, for instance, I will use a lot of noise traps to alert things that you're coming, and that changes the scope of the game. In Wise Guys, for instance, my first thought would be, look, if I use a car bomb, I have to be prepared that they're going to miss the clue or miss the roll, and that character's life ends. Because that's a big thing. Like you being in a car that explodes, the chances of
it's not an automatic death though. It's still 3d6 damage. So
but
they
for me,
bennies and
yeah, that's true. But for me, if I wanted to use traps in Wise Guys, I would add them for paranoia, So in the sense that maybe my characters might get one of their contact edges comes in and they get a tip off that they've upset, I don't know, Gary the garter belt so hard that he's organized to be taken out. So now everything that they look at, they're looking underneath the car every time they want to use it. You know, they before they open the fridge, they get a friend open or whatever. So it adds that tension to the game. But you're right, you've got to be careful that that you pace it right so it doesn't slow down the game, so that everything they want to do, they go, I'm going to check the mailbox.
That's the thing. It's a can of worm, you know. Once you've done that, and I'm sure it's fun for maybe the first session, but if everything comes to a crawl because every step of the way the characters become so suspicious that, you know, nothing can move forward, then yeah. But no, I think that'd be fun to do that. Yeah.
In a military kind of game, the trap is always deadly, essentially, but you've got the option of having a specialist sapper or someone that's trained to remove traps. So if we were playing in Weird Wars Vietnam, the chances of tripwires and you know, all sorts of other traps would be a constant thing, something that we should all be aware of as players of that game. But you're right. I don't think games, or at least in a role-playing sense, I don't think there's been any real way of getting the balance right where you want to keep that tension high, but you don't want the game bogged down into every minute they're poking a 10-foot pole at something or taking a roll or a check. With traps, though, isn't most of the rolls done behind the GM screen? Like you know their notice roll, so you roll it for, or their notice skill, and you roll it for them, and that kind of thing. Is that how you handle it, or do you get the player? So when you go roll for notice, they immediately know something's up, right? So whether they fail or pass, they're going to go, all right, look, I'm looking now, kind of thing.
Well, I would say no, and for the reason that, okay, so if you roll for them behind the screen and they fail, well, first, what about their bennies? They couldn't spend bennies on that roll, right? You didn't give them the opportunity to do that. And second, if they fail, then isn't it just like them just walking into it because they didn't know it was coming, and now all of a sudden you say, okay, you were walking and poof, a bomb exploded in your face. That to me doesn't really raise any kind of tension to the scene. It just feels like a cheap trick that you pulled on the player.
Yeah, which is the problem. But that's kind of how it's set up in fantasy games. Is ideally the GM rolls the perception check or the search check or whatever it is, and if they don't make it, then you narrate that they walk over. Well, see, no, I don't necessarily. So let's say they don't notice it, right? But I might have a situation where they don't notice it. I've made the rule they don't notice it, but then I might narrate something like you walk along and you stand on a particular flagstone or stone and you feel a click, right? And now it's a quick decision, well, what do I do? Do I stand there? Do I jump back? Do I call the thief
So it's not the end of that sequence. It's like it just engage a sequence of other roles to get out of the way, basically.
Yeah, because like you, I would find that, and it goes off, you know, or the big block drops on your head, or the car explodes. You're right. You're taking player agency away. And while that works in a movie, we're not playing a movie. We're playing a game. And you're right. Then they can't use their bennies and all that sort of stuff. So I still fall in the camp where you make that notice roll in secret because you want to keep the game flowing. The problem with the notice roll is that you say, make a notice roll, and they immediately know something's up, right? No matter what the situation is. Right. Do you notice the person in the crowd? Do you notice the trap? Do you notice that gem in the corner? So when you say make a notice roll and they fail it, they're immediately thinking, shit, he's holding something from me. Excuse me, my language is terrible today. So the GM's holding back, or I've missed something. I've failed. You get that I fail moment. But if you make the roll in secret, and if it's a trap, I wouldn't automatically then go straight to boom, haha, you die, take 10 D10 damage or whatever it is. I would go, you feel a click just before the axe is coming. You feel this rush of wind come from a passageway that the air is still. All of a sudden you feel wind. What does that mean? And then they'd make a I don't know, an athletics roll or maybe another notice roll that they get to roll then. And if they fail that one, then they get hit by the trap. Does that
right? But if they fail the notice roll, does that mean the trap doesn't trigger? Doesn't the trap trigger regardless of whether you succeed on your notice check or not?
If they failed the secret roll, then the trap will be triggered. What I would do then is give them an opportunity to get out of it, out of the trap. So they hear the click, they get a chance to jump back, or they hear the click and they have to make the decision, well, if I move, it actually does make the trap trigger. So now all of a sudden they're on that pressure plate, you know, when you see in the movies where someone stands there and goes, nobody move, kind of thing.
No, I get that part, but what I don't get is that, okay, let's pretend that instead of making that notice roll secret, it's out in the open. So you ask me, Eric, make a notice roll. So I succeed it. And then you tell me, well, you notice that flagstone there, it's a bit, jarred. It's not straight. So now I know that, there might be a trap there. Now I'm going to go investigate the trap. So that's if I succeed. Now, if I fail it, then you still narrate the same thing that you were going to narrate with a secret roll, don't you? You would just say, oh, you hear click, and now
the problem is at that point, my players are, what I could see happen in that situation with my players is, let's say they fail their notice roll, they will immediately take an action that would be in their favor. I will stop. I will pull back. I will pull out my 10-foot pole. Where the idea behind that notice roll is they are oblivious. They know nothing is wrong, right? And yet, because you've said take a notice roll, the player is automatically in, oh man, something's about to go down here, right? So the idea behind the secret roll is that they don't feel it. They don't see it coming. And then you go, click. And all of a sudden that brings tension to the game. That the problem with the notice roll is it tends to, like when you get the players to do it like that, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people, again, yelling at their car radio right now, is when you ask for notice rolls, one, you can ask for too many, which makes the game really boring. So if you've got 100 traps in your dungeon, one, that's really bad, and two, that's very dull. It just, I don't know, just for me, I want to keep the narrative story, and anytime I say, please roll, I've now taken a break in the story. And I've taken away that ability to have that role-playing moment because the players are now pre-geared to look for danger.
Okay. Well, no, I respect that. But to me, I see it more that if you ask me for the perception check, from that time until I roll and you tell me what happened, this is, to me, where the tension grows because I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay.
If you take that part away from me, it's like there's no time for me to get anxious at what's going to happen. Yeah, Gary's been quiet. What's going on, Gary?
Oh, I was just waiting for you two dolts to get your stuff together and figure it all out. Now, let me put on the pro GM hat and tell you how to do this. You ready for this? This is how you do it. When they are approaching the car, you say to them, give me a notice roll to notice that the door is maybe open or you see like a lump underneath the car or something along those lines. There is your anxiety and tension right out of the gate. This also allows your players to choose whether or not they're going to spend bennies on it or something along those lines. So you just tell them up front. You would say, give me a notice roll to figure out that something is amiss with your car or that there's a bomb set up in your car somewhere. They choose their bennies, and if they fail the roll, they hop in the car. But that's not just a kaboom right out of the gate. Once they get in the car, now it's time to roll the dramatic task or give them something along that lines. The first one's just to notice whether it's there. Let me use a pit trap example. So you're walking through the dungeon. Give me a notice roll to spot the pit trap that's in front of you that's going to make you fall down into, some spikes and probably impale you, leave you laying there in a pile of your own blood and urine. And the tension's there, the anxiety's there. You're like, oh my God, I got to make this roll. You fail. You've fallen in towards the trap. Now give me an athletics check to screech your hands out or something like that. Spread yourself out. Try and sort of reduce the damage that you're going to take from this trap. So you're not necessarily like kabooming them. You're still going to give them that second chance to get out of the way, kind of a thing. But always let them know right out of the gate. That's how you want to throw that tension in there. All of a sudden, the guy's walking up to like, you do that on me, I'm freaking out. I know I got to make this roll. If I don't make this roll, the stuff's going to go south. I fail the roll. It's fair game. I sit down in the car, I turn the keys, and that's when you go, click. Okay, dramatic task. Let's go. You wouldn't want to do that all the time, but the notice roll is just to see if you notice it. You can still get out of a trap, even if it's sprung on you in some other fashion. So you can forego that whole, I killed you kind of thing, take X amount of damage, and still have some fun with your players. Pro GM tip right there, bro.
So you're saying that, I guess what I'm counter-arguing or just giving thought to is, first of all, my first thought when you started talking was every bad guy in your world is inept. They're going to leave something behind. They're going to not do their job properly. Whereas I'm assuming that whoever my bad guy in Wise Guys is, on my head dude, he's going to send someone pretty skilled to take on players, because players are supposed to be a cut above the rest, right? So they're going to leave their screwdriver behind, or they're going to leave the door ajar, or I don't know. Does that mean they're no longer a professional assassin? I'm just wondering where that is. And I guess from my experience, if I ask someone for a notice roll, I've immediately taken away the tension, because what I've done, or I might have added the tension, but what I've removed is the ability for the story to flow, because the players, in my experience,
it's too much
metagaming in a way that's not realistic for the character, right? The minute I go, you walk to your car, make a notice roll, they're going to go, I'm going to, see, I'm swearing again, sorry. I'm going to check the door. I'm going to check the fuel tank. I'm going to check the tires. Do you do that every time you walk up to the car?
No. But you're the GM. You control the narrative.
Yeah.
You can just tell them, no, you're not doing that. The time has stopped now. Give me your notice roll. Time has stopped. You can't do anything. Time has stopped.
Okay,
yes.
so
you never do that?
Haven't I just taken away the player agency the same way I've done by rolling it behind?
No, you control the flow of the game. You control when we go to another scene. You control how fast the time goes in a scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I appreciate that. But I've now got to have a conversation with my player and go, no, your character wouldn't do that, man. Come on, come with me.
Yeah,
but if I roll behind the screen, right, which I'm not a big fan of normally, but in this situation, I feel this is where you do roll behind the screen. So you roll behind the screen. They failed their notice roll. At this point, I narrate a point where you open the door and you feel that you hear a scrape that's not normal when you open the car. So maybe a contact.
Wait, they failed.
Points
did you just say they failed their roll? So if they failed,
they failed their roll.
Yeah.
No, they failed their notice roll. So what I've done is I put them in a position where the trap is now activated.
Okay.
But I don't detonate the trap straight away. I don't make the trap become fatal at that point. What I do is I then, because as a GM, I am a fan of I'm a fan of the characters. I want the heroes to succeed, right? I begin the trap initiates. It starts its sequence, okay? But I always give my players an opportunity to then use their skill or their nous or their problem solving skills to get out of it. Right. So you've opened the door and you've opened the door, you've sat in the car and you feel something click, or you put your key in the ignition and there's a pause. There's a pause with, like, it's not normal. You know what I mean? Like something is playing with the electronics in the car as it's activated something else. I give them a clue as to something is not normal right now. That's all my notice roll is. Right? If they notice it beforehand, I'm going to go, oh, yeah, you notice the car door's open. This is before they get to the point. But if they fail that notice roll, they're now in the trap. But that doesn't mean the trap is just kaboom, it's over. I now give them an opportunity to go, I use my electronic skills to check if the wire's been messed with underneath the column, or I'm going to use my athletics roll to jump out of the car. At this point, I still give them a chance. Does that make sense?
It's very obfuscated.
Can you define obfuscated for me, please?
Yes, I can. Okay, Google, define obfuscation.
Without searching Google.
It means hiding.
Ah,
of
okay.
making something obscure, unclear, or unintelligible.
There you go.
So
I
what's
do actually-
unclear and unintelligible? Why don't you just say Paris?
It sounds like we're sort of saying the same thing. The only difference is that you roll behind the screen, which I'm not a fan of. I think that you should tell the players what they're getting into, and that's not only going to ratchet up the tension, but allow them to use their bennies. Or you're giving them enough information that they know whether or not it is going to be what's the word? Like the value of the roll is worth spending bennies on. Give me a notice roll to notice that something is afoot with your car.
Yeah.
It's something is different. And if they fail it, then they're in it. They're in the trap. They haven't noticed it.
And I guarantee you, once you say that, the player's going to grab his dice and everybody else around the table is going to stop what they're doing and they're going to look at that guy roll because they want to see what happens. Same thing when the GM rolls in front of them instead of behind the screen. People want to see if it's a result, a success, if it's a raise, how much damage. That raises tension.
I agree with that. But all right, let me narrate a scene for you, right? And the reason being is we've listened to other podcasts that have talked about the notice stat skill being a dump stat, right? Or let's say I have another character in the party, another player in the party, and they put all these points in notice. I'm not going to waste points in there, right? For me, a statistic, or if I've allocated a dice to something, it doesn't just mean what I can roll in that instance. It gives me a gauge of how good that character is or what that character is like. So if I have a character with a high notice roll, I get the impression that character is always pretty alert, right? They're walking around, they're always taking in this scenario and they're calculating. I'm oversimplifying this, but so I'm not negating the ability to use bennies and I'm not taking away player agency, but at the point when they made their character, they said, I'm going to put X amount of points into notice because I want my character to be aware of his surroundings, or I am going to put bugger all into that and leave it at D4, and my character is oblivious to most things, right? So for me saying, please make a notice roll at this point, I'm actually disenfranchising those guys that have pumped more points into notice, because they have said my character is in a situation of surprise or where I need to be more alert. I want my character to have a better chance, right? And yet if I tell someone that has only got their D4 and they didn't put anything extra in it, I'm not only giving that person a chance to make that roll, I'm giving a chance to Benny. And they can keep bennying and while they've got bennies. But if I've got someone that's put D8 in notice, right, and I roll their D8 behind the screen, they have a better chance of noticing there's a trap coming. And I think I'm actually doing them a better service for them putting points in notice. And so at that point, if they pass and for the party, and they're the hero of the story now because they put those points in, they didn't have to spend bennies. Go, you notice this, everyone halts, you tell them don't move or whatever the case may be. Whereas the dude that only put D4, he's just going to blindly walk into that car because he's too busy focused on his bagel or his telephone or whatever it is that he's got. And he's going to get in that car and he fails. And at that point, I then give him his opportunity to play and go, wait a minute, it's hotter in this car for some, or it's colder in this car for some reason, or it's wet in this car because the guy that set up the trap had actually left the door open when it started to rain. So there's water on the seat. Why is that? I give them something to think about as a player. So I've taken dice out of it at this point. I'm giving them a clue, and that gives me a role-playing moment. My problem with traps and notice, and in this instance, it always comes down to mechanics. I want it to be a story. I want it to flow. So in my first instance, I'm rewarding those characters, those players that put points in notice, in my opinion. I'm sure people disagree. Pass or fail, the story then unfolds as I see it, and then the characters get to make their agency or their decisions on that point.
Yeah. Well, you're taking the randomness of a game into it.
I'm a touch confused. A couple of things. So pertaining to the dump stat, notice being a dump stat, that's the only reason the other podcast is saying that notice is a dump stat or they don't take it is because everybody, their whole premise is everybody takes notice. Why would I take it? You're just throwing away points but that's in a party setting. When Jimmy Two Shoes is walking up, here's the thing that I didn't get. You were You were saying, okay, so, Johnny walks up to the car and you're presuming that if he doesn't have notice, he's not going to be aware of what's going on, as opposed to somebody that put a D12 in notice is going to have a better chance of noticing it. But hold on a second. Because you need to correct that. I'm confused.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that if a professional assassin wires a bomb to my car, or to my character's car, and I have decided that my character only has the D4 notice that comes standard, or that as a Suede character, every being on the planet has this base notice roll. As far as I'm concerned, the chances of them actually seeing that thing installed in their car are pretty limited, because they are oblivious to most things. They just see the world as it is in front of them, and they carry on with their life. If I have a character that has a D8 in notice or a D12 in notice, that person or that character, I have decided, is particularly aware of their surroundings. They're constantly surveying the landscape. They're constantly looking around.
Okay.
This is before we get to any dice. This is just the way they are.
Hang tight. I want to cut you off here. Hang tight. You're doing it wrong, is what I'm going to say. I'll tell you why. I'm walking up to the car, and there is a thing in the way that I'm going to notice. Right? That chance to notice is the same whether you've got a D4 or you've got a D12. If I'm just walking up before anything is rolled, and I'll tell you why.
Target number is always 4.
It's not even that. As I'm walking up to the car, there's a chance that I can notice something. The ability for me to notice it is greater if I put points into the D12 when I roll. Like, my chance for success is greater. But
hence I still roll for it.
No, hold on a second. You're one step ahead of the dice roll by saying that because he has a D12, he is more perceptive. He has a better chance to note. But that's, you see my confusion. It's like there's a pit trap on the ground. The guy with the D4 you're assuming is a dolt and would never see it, where the guy with the D12 will see it. But you're not even rolling the dice. They both have an equal chance. They both get a roll.
They both get still get a roll. I'm not arguing that point. What I'm saying is I do the roll in this instance, and this is the only instance I do it behind the screen. And the reason being, right, is if I create a sniper character, okay, and I put more points into notice, which is something I probably would do if I'm making a sniper character, because my sniper needs to be very aware of his surroundings. Okay, he has to crawl through the jungle. He has to, or the forest, whatever it is. So he's got to be aware of if he's going to put his foot in the right spot and make a noise. If there's any traps, if someone else is going to see him, and whether he can see a target at X amount of distance, right? So he can take his advantage. Yet standard Joe the schmo, who just has had no training in how to look at their environment. They're just an average, everyday human being, right? They have a chance to see that someone messed with their car, but are they going to think about, oh, my car has been booby-trapped, or are they specifically looking for this potential in their world? What I'm saying is that if I have D10 in fighting, you will look at my character sheet and go, that is a trained fighter. If I have D4 in fighting, if I have D4 in fighting, you're going to say that character is a very limited fighter. They're not that good, compared to a D10. Right?
I got what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that player that puts their points in the notice and says my character is looking at the world in a different way than a standard human being, because I pump points in here. They're skilled at picking up oddities within their environment, then they have a better chance. And I don't feel that someone that didn't put points in notice at that point should be allowed to use bennies.
Yeah, but that comes into play when the dice roll is made. The idea that you're throwing out at us predates the roll. Like, just walking up to the car, you're saying because he has a D4, he's not going to notice it like a D12. That's not how you play the game. You walk up to the car, when they're walking up to the car, they both have a chance to notice. Then the success ratio comes in with the guy that put the points in D12. You're a step back. You're a pre-step before any of this happens.
No, and I'll tell you why I'm not a step back. Right, first of all, both get a roll. I'm not taking the roll away. I'm just taking away the ability to use a Benny in that spot. And I think by doing that, I'm rewarding the person that has given more points to that special skill. And secondly,
what if the guy with D4? What if the guy with D4 in notice took the luck edge?
Yeah, there's.
Then I would take that into account. luck edge means he gets to roll a second time, yeah?
No,
So
it
I
means
would
he's
roll
got
a
an
second-
extra Benny. He's telling you that
well,
I
then
want to
in
be
that
a lucky
instance,
guy.
If he has lucky, I might give him +2 to the roll, or I might roll a second time if he fails. Right? I wouldn't discount any edges.
See,
But what I'm saying is that in a situation like we as GMs, that we get, at least I do, I don't roll dice unless the outcome, okay, is uncertain. So let's say in a situation where an environment is calm, I have all the time to work on something, right? If I'm an engineer and I want to rebuild a radio, if my character's an engineer and wants to rebuild a radio, I would say, you fix the radio. You're not getting shot at. You got all the time. You got all the parts. But if someone didn't put any points into engineering, or even just a D4, and I think, okay, maybe that character is going to have a harder time than a guy that put D12 in it, I would make that person roll. Does that make sense? Because that person is, I'm looking at someone, if they've got D12 in engineering, they're one of the best in the world, right? I don't need to make them roll at that point. And in this instance, what I'm saying with this surprise of a trap, of falling into a trap, is that if someone has D12 and notice, they're an expert in looking at the world around them, and they're constantly looking for those things. And by me rolling behind the screen, I'm giving them a better. I'm actually applauding them for that, because the person with D4 that I'm also rolling behind the screen, I don't give them a chance to Benny out of it. If they fail, and they may have the luck edge, and I take all that into account, but if they fail that, they're now in the trap, and now I put the onus on the players. You tell me how you get out. How does this character notice the thing that he got into get out?
So the guy that you're rolling behind the screen for,
yep.
How do you let him spend his bennies then?
When he's in the trap.
I have another question.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if
after the part that comes after that.
What, when they're in the trap?
Okay.
I have another. I want to say a thing here that this I don't have the words for it, but it seems like you're giving player agency, not withholding it by presuming that this guy's stats in D12. Do you see my problem here? Like, am I making sense? Because it's like
I think I see your problem, but what maybe I'm not sure that. So if a guy has a D12 in notice and a guy has a D4 in notice, who is likely to notice it first?
I get what you're saying, but that's not how you play the game. It's the chance of success is based off of how many points that he puts into notice. You're just assuming that somebody that has a D4 is like just a dummy with their head up their arse walking around like,
no, I'm not saying they're a dummy with their head up their arse at all. What I'm saying is that person is used to looking at the world the way that you and I do. Okay. But so for instance, if I was to walk up to your truck right now, the one that you work with, okay, I would go, oh, cool, shiny truck. And I'd jump in and I'd probably just wouldn't think twice about it. But you, as you're walking towards your truck, right, you would go, oh, that tire looks a bit flat, and that needs to be pumped up, or geez, I really need to wash it, or oh, there's a crack in the fuel. Do you know what I mean? Like you look at your trucks every day because you work with them as a tool, and you would pick up on things that I will never see because you are trained in driving that truck, maintaining that truck, and making sure it gets you to where you got to go. So what I'm arguing is that in this instance, Joe Schmo like me, who's a bit of a buffhead, right, who doesn't look at trucks the same way that Gary does. So I've got, in this instance, I have notice of D4, but you have notice of D8. I then roll behind the screen. If Gary is the first person walking up to that truck, Gary has a better chance of noticing there's a trap there because it's his truck, right? And he's used to scanning his truck before he gets in it. That's part of his job. But if Paris walks up to that truck, Paris only gets a D4 because Paris is not used to looking at that truck. And I'm rewarding Gary for putting points into his D8 notice, right? Because I'm not giving Joe Schmo Buffhead, who didn't bother to put any points in it, a chance to Benny his way out and do this amazing roll. The chances are he may do an amazing roll behind the screen. And I go, hey, don't jump in that car. Your character notices this, right? I'm not about to roll and go, oh shit, he succeeded. No, I'm going to make him just walk into the trap anyway. I'm not taking away his chance to notice the trap. What I'm saying is I'm not giving that player an ability to make his character better than it is. And I'm rewarding the guy that puts points into that skill.
Okay. So here's my issue. Why are you rewarding the guy that puts points into that? Just putting the points into it is a reward in itself that he's taken. Why are you doing it? You should remain neutral Because it's not your job to favor people that take certain skills.
I can't be neutral. There's no such thing because I'm a fan of the characters, and
but all you're doing
is his moment to shine.
All you're doing as a game master is telling a story and presenting a problem. The dice mechanics are what resolves the problem, and then you carry on. You don't. Now, here's the other thing that you just said. So, are you assigning the dice level to the character, or now you're keeping track of what their notice skills are and not them?
That's correct. I know what their notice skills are. I don't arbitrarily affect it.
Yeah, I'm pulling the pin on that one, man. Just give me a freaking notice roll because you're just overcomplicating the situation.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is by me telling you make a notice roll, I've put a suggestion in your head that something's up as a player, okay? And the minute I do that, you can't help yourself. You will make your character act in a very different way than they would if they're oblivious. You fail your notice roll, you know something is up, right? So your character suddenly doesn't act the way that it normally would. It stops shoving the bagel in its face. It stops reading the paper as it jumps in the car. It's now very alert, and all of a sudden I start getting statements like, "I check the ignition. Why? Because I just want to look at the ignition this time." He failed his notice roll, but he still wants to ask me what the ignition plate, what the ignition looks like, or is it has my seat cover been rumpled, or is there any mud on the floor that wasn't there before? The player instinctively just changes the way they play. What I'm trying to do is keep it in a more role-playing situation, reward the guy that put the points in his thing, and keep the story narrative going so that if Mr. D4 man fails in the background, right, he's now in the trap and we have to role-play that. If someone has put D12 in notice, they should have an expectation that I, as the GM, have some element of knowledge of this. And so traps and surprises and getting ambushed should be harder against that character. Not because Mr. D4 gets to roll
You
pennies.
keep saying the same thing. You're favoring the guy.
Oh, yeah.
I
am favoring the guy.
But the dice are already favoring him. Mechanically, the dice are already favoring him.
Exactly.
And you resolve all of those problems by just saying, as you walk up to the car, give me a notice roll to see if you can tell that the car has been fiddled with in some way. And if not,
so now I automatically know the car has been fiddled with as the player.
It doesn't matter. If he listen, stop.
You need to play your character.
You need to play
your character.
All you're doing is telling him to make a notice roll that something has been up with the car. Pardon my French, I'll bleep that out. Something has been fiddled with. That doesn't mean that he gets to not go into the car. He's still going to get in. It's just whether he notices that something has been messed up. He doesn't just get to automatically say.
This is where my problem lies in that, because if I don't tell you, right, that if I don't give you an indication that the car has been filled with because you failed your role in the background, your character, or the way you present your character, role plays naturally. I jump in the car, I start the car, I start driving, whatever the case may be. But the minute I say make a notice roll, right, you as the player start thinking, holy crap, my character is in some form of danger here, and it alters the way that you play. And then I have to have that I have to have that discussion about, no buddy, you still get in that car because you didn't see it.
Yeah, so
right?
you're
I don't want that conversation.
As a GM, this is how you teach people to play the game, because that's how you're supposed to play the game. They don't just automatically. What you're implying is as they walk up and you say, "Oh, you give me a notice roll," that all of a sudden, just asking that, so they fail. Now all of a sudden they're imbued with all of this knowledge as a player character. Like as the PC's just going to stop and he's going to start looking at the tire like that. That's irrational.
And if I was playing the game with you, or I'm playing the game with a certain amount of my friends, some of my friends, I don't have a problem with that. And in those instances, I won't roll behind the screen. Okay.
Yeah, that's
because
absolutely
I know
irrational.
That player will still go, well, I failed. I'm still going to walk in that car and I'm going to see what happens. But in most instances, with a lot of people that I play, not just at work, but at conventions or whatever, the minute I say make a notice roll or make a perception check, they change the way they play the game.
Yeah.
And then I have to be in a situation where my game derails because I'm now arguing with them about how I think their player should act. And they go, no, it's my character. I'll do it whatever I want.
No.
Yet if I do it behind the screen and I put them in a situation,
this guy would be slapped and asked to leave my table. And this is the thing. As a game master, you should be the guy teaching people how to play the game. That's like, you're supposed to know the rules, and this is not. This isn't a thing. Like, what do you know what I'm saying? Like, this is a perfect opportunity for you to say, hey, these are how you play the game, right, Eric?
So you're telling me if you were doing a one shot, you're doing a one shot at this convention, okay, and someone makes a notice, fails a notice roll after you've said make a notice roll, you're going to spend part of your time at a convention that you paid for to teach this bloke how to role play, and yet you may never see him again.
Wow.
Wait, just roll it behind the screen. He's stuck in the trap. Move on.
I like how you're full on like molding the specific situation that creates a massive problem, because that's as far as me playing a convention game, I've been to 3 conventions in the 40 years, so it's a non-event. But this is a perfect example of a time in which you can create a teaching moment for somebody that I agree with you, right, to make them a better player. And it comes back tenfold. They'll teach that to somebody else and carry on. I feel like we got a little bit off track here, or
I might teach them that they need to put more points in notice.
I might just throw a freaking greasy poutine fry at them and hit them in the face, but
yeah, just tell them next time put D12 in there. I'm not even gonna have you roll. You're automatically gonna succeed. So.
I'm not saying that automatically.
That is a David Scott thing, by the way. That was an interesting and a learning event for me. He was talking about it on the show one time. You're walking through the forest. Give me a notice roll to notice the ninjas hidden in and amongst the trees. It creates tension, and you're like, oh my God, I got to make this roll. And it also allows the players to determine the value of spending a Benny instead of just saying, give me a perception roll or a notice roll. And the guy's like, you just sitting there like, for what? So that I can notice if I'm going to trip over a pop can on the road, or maybe I'm about to get hit by a car. Like the value of me spending a Benny is and making the roll is actually greatly increased when you fill the player with the proper information that they can then make a more informed decision.
Okay, I think that's the bit where we kind of differ. My method is very much geared around a game that doesn't use bennies, and this seems to be the sticking point with that. Would I be correct? That
Could be, yeah.
I'm taking away the ability for a player to use bennies on their roll. That's the problem you've got with it.
Yeah. I think what you're doing is you're trying to fix a problem, the metagaming problem. That might happen by creating another problem, basically.
Yeah, I'm not trying to fix that. What I'm saying is that by presenting my game in such a way, I let the game flow better. Instead of you make a notice roll, you failed, continue on, or I'm gonna go back and get a bagel. No, I don't think you are gonna get a bagel, buddy. You're gonna get in that car. But no, I don't, like, I've now got to have a discussion about why this character is not getting a car, and I'm actually taking away player agency at that point.
No,
right? And I've slowed the game down. I've ruined the narrative. But if I make the roll,
because you tell him that he sat down in the car when you failed it, you sat down in the car.
You've never had it. Well, but then again, I'm playing his character. Then you sat down in the car.
No, you're not.
No, he said, I'm going to my car and I want to go to McDonald's.
Yes.
Okay, make a notice check. You failed it. Oh, you're in the car. You turn on the ignition. Oh, something's about to happen.
Player agency, taking his player agency away. Player agency is when you tell them what they can or can't do. You're not doing that. You're simply asking for a notice roll. He's still going to get in the car no matter what, because that's what his plan was to do. You're walking down the dungeon hallway. Give me a notice roll. Okay. It doesn't mean he's like, no, I just turn around and walk away.
See, in my head, you've done exactly the same thing that I do, but I took the argument out of mine. All I did was continue the narrative. All I did was make my roll behind the screen. You get in your car. Because they failed the roll, you get in your car, this happens, you start seeing this. He makes the roll, before you get in your car, you actually notice this, and they go, ooh, and all of a sudden there's that tension, right? I don't want them to be tense if they don't notice it. I want them to get in the damn car.
Yeah, it's just about the timing of when you would ask that roll.
So I'm saying that rolling behind the screen gives a better flow to the game and timing. And I'm sure I'm either going to get howled down or you boys are going to get howled down. And I can't wait to read the responses.
Not me. People love me.
That's right. Yes.
People always take your side. People always take your side, Paris, because you're a saint. You're a freaking saint. And
I'm not
nobody
a saint.
wants to disagree
Dude,
with you.
I said shit 4 times on this podcast. Look, make it 5. I'm not a saint.
Yeah. How many kids' lives have you saved this year so far? You're a saint.
Dude, that's low. It's got nothing to do with it. This is about
Mother Conte. Oh my God.
Oh my.
Wow. Mother Conte, I forgot what I was going to say.
Let's look at a couple things in there, because I mentioned at the top of that segment that there were a few bits in there that pertains to traps. So when I was looking through that, I found the minefields. That sounds like a trap, right? Page 79 in the Suede book. So it says, for dramatic purposes, a character who steps on a mine should get a notice roll. Failure. Wait, hold on. Failure means she realizes it before stepping off and detonating it. Saving the victim requires a repair roll at -4, but failure detonates the device immediately. What I think it's pretty cool with this, interesting, is the fact that the even after the notice roll, there's still something dramatic that happens with that. Like, oh, I got my foot on it. I didn't detonate it, but now, please, guys, save me.
Yeah.
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 So that's one thing, calling for notice roll. Again, there's no mention of being upfront about what they stepped on before the roll, or there's no mention of rolling behind the screen either. So still, we're like, both versions are valid according to the rule book so far. Excuse me.
Except I took Benny's away.
Right.
Yeah, you
took away
did.
player. Whatever the opposite of that is. I got a question for you. There's something that irks me in this game. So you step on a freaking minefield. You step on a mine. The damage for a mine is 2d6 plus 2. That there's a very good chance that I could step on 10 mines in a row and never take a single wound. That irritates me. Heavy weapon damage needs to be in like sort of a separate sort of class of its own, where like 2d6 plus 2, unless you're wearing heavy protection, like a bomb suit, when you step on this thing, then you take 2d6 points of damage. Because if you step on a mine, you should just be paced. You should be pink mist, and that's it.
No. How many people have lost their limbs from personal mines and didn't die in the war?
I see.
Many.
But they lost a limb. And I think
2d6 plus 2, that means it's an average of about 9 damage.
Don't get all number smart on me, mister.
People have 4 or 5 toughness. That's enough to kill someone right there on average.
Don't like it. Moving on.
So for you, it's I've created a cardinal sin by rolling behind the counter and behind the GM screen and not letting you use a Benny. But hell, if they step on a person of mine, just rip up that character sheet, bro. That's all cool.
Damn straight. Turn them into pink mist.
Should be dead right away.
Sorry for your bad luck.
Oh boy, busted. Snap, son. All right.
See, I would have my players roll before they even walked into the minefield, maybe to notice clumps of grass that are maybe a little shallow. Maybe they're seeing some brown piles of freshly dug up dirt, something along those lines. That would give them that idea that maybe there's a minefield ahead. And then if they failed that check, then it would be like rolling to see if they stepped on one.
See, and that's the problem I have with your argument, is you're assuming that whoever put that stuff in was inept.
Well, so are you.
Mounds of earth.
I knew he was going to say that. I knew Paris was. I was going to make that voice.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you can't make a notice roll because some inept idiot up here tried to kill you up the front. That means everybody in your world is stupid. They've left something behind.
I work with people that have been doing their job for 40 years and are still stupid. So,
right?
Yeah.
Are they
setting up mines?
Not every guy that puts a mine in the ground is going to be the top of his game, all right? Maybe that guy's got a D4 in placing mines.
Well, The thing you should notice is his bits hanging from the tree.
All right, something else. Edges. Well, one edge, danger sense. So, if you're driving, your hero can sense something bad is about to happen. When rolling for surprise, he adds +2 to his notice roll to act in the first round. With a raise, he starts the encounter on hold. In other situations not covered by surprise rules, like a sniper shot, a pit trap, poison drink, etc. Danger sense gives him a notice roll at -2 or +2 if a notice roll is usually allowed to detect the hazard and take appropriate action. If this was an attack and the hero makes his notice roll, the foe doesn't get the drop against him.
Yep.
So what if someone had danger sense, like
To
with
my
the examples? Yeah.
So I would play it two ways. If someone has spent a whole advancement putting danger sense in their character, I may elect to let them roll in that initial instance because they've gone and spent that thing. Or I might have a role-playing moment where I tell them they feel uneasy or something's wrong, and then they can tell me they want to make a notice roll. If they don't, if they play it that way, we just move on. And Gary's shaking his head.
Yeah, I'm like hot garbage.
Add all the bonuses.
All right.
I'll be in the situation. But yeah, so Gary, I'm assuming you're thinking, no, if someone's taken that edge and I'm rolling behind the screen, I've disempowered them. Yeah?
No. Well, here's the thing. As a dungeon master, it's not your responsibility to play the characters. It's not your responsibility to know their stats or to know what edges or any of that stuff. That's on them. So all you're there to do is describe the scene. You're walking through, you stumble over a pile of broken bricks from a fallen tower, and as you peek your head over the top, give me a notice roll to see that there's a sniper in the bell tower that's about to shoot you in the face. Then that guy looks at his character sheet and says, hey, I have danger sense. This is going to come in here. I'm going to make notice because I took notice D12 and add my danger sense onto it. That's not a game master's responsibility. You're just there to describe the scene. He's there. So if he even forgets that he has danger sense, which I wouldn't even take the time to find out if he did, because when it's his responsibility to play his character. If he didn't add those bonuses in and I shot him in the face and he came back later, there's no retconning that. I'd be like, sorry, buddy. It's, You've got a responsibility as a player to know how to play the game as well. It's not all on me.
Problem with the way you just worded it is that pass or fail, they know there's a sniper.
It doesn't matter.
The shot's still coming. The shot's coming either way.
They don't automatically get to say, I turn and run away and hide behind a block.
What's more exciting in the game? If you know there's a sniper and then I role play the shot that rings out that you didn't know was coming, or a shot rings out that you didn't know was coming. How does that make, which one of those two scenarios is more dramatic?
Knowing that my head is about to get a huge bullet in it is way more exciting when I'm making that roll. That roll becomes way more important that I succeed. And it also allows me to spend my bennies if I fail. Than it does if I just don't know that's going to happen and I'm just rolling a notice roll. For what? A cat's going to come out and make a bunch of noise? That's, you know what I mean? It's like the level of danger is Will Rogers style.
And the other thing I disagree with you, Gary, is I do need to know what's in that character sheet because I have to know what their parry is. I need to know what their toughness is. I need to know quite a number of things about this character. I need to know a lot of things about how the world reacts to them.
Table tense.
So I still need to know then.
Yeah.
And notice better be on that damn table tent.
All right, something else. Evasion. So that basically is a rule that says that some attacks can be evaded, like Dragon's Breath, something like that. So it gives the character an opportunity to roll agility to get out of the way. It could be a area of effect, like a grenade or something like that. You need to kind of see it ahead of time. So like what Paris was describing earlier, that, the first step is the notice check. And after that, you have a way to get out of the way. So I think it's safe to say that you can make at least some traps evasive. That you can evade anyway. Maybe not all of them, But yeah, like I said earlier, that's the avenue we've taken with Wise Guys for the car bombing anyway. To just jump out of the way. Now it wouldn't work for a motion sensor because once once you've passed through the beam, then it's triggered. There's an alarm that comes off, and cops are on their way, so you can't really evade that. But what if it was like Gary talked about, the boulder falling on top of your head? I would give them a way to jump, an opportunity to jump out of the way. So
let me put it this way too, Gary. I'm thinking, because when you watch an action movie like Indiana Jones or something like that, right? You don't get excited by Indiana Jones noticing a trap and then walking around it. But you do get excited in the scene where all of a sudden Indiana Jones turns around and there's a boulder and he's now in the trap. Him getting out of that trap is the exciting part of the game. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you can't compare a movie to playing a role-playing game. They're two completely different things.
Because what I'm saying is,
I say no.
I'm doing the part about whether they're surprised or not. That's it. Other than that, no trap. Not even the sniper you're talking about is. If I like a sniper, if it has the drop on you, there's a very good chance that your character is going to die. If I'm playing a really gritty game, then I'd let that happen. But if it's not, like, as I said, because I want my characters to tell these, I want my players to have this fantastic story that their characters tell.
Yeah, but how does that change the fact with the sniper? It doesn't change the sniper scenario. If you roll for them and they miss the roll, then you're just gonna roll the shooting roll for the sniper and then roll damage. They don't have a chance to get out of it.
I just want to interject one thing too. Mm-hmm. So back to the minefield things. When I'm saying that you were the one that was saying that, every minefield guy is an idiot that doesn't know how to place minefields. But the way that you're playing it is that's exactly what's happening. So your guy walks up to the car, he gets in and he goes to turn the key over. And this is the point at which you give him the ability to notice. Well, why wouldn't that trap, just as soon as he turns the key, automatically go off? Kaboom! Like, basically, you're playing the way that your style is that every guy that's ever planted a car bomb is an idiot that doesn't know how to set a tumbler and the key right, so it feels weird.
What I'm saying is I'm giving my players an opportunity, whether they're not in the trap or in the trap, to at least do something. So go back to the sniper, for instance, right? If we were playing a game and it's a military game, I expect my players to go, I want to take a notice roll to survey this area, right? But if it's a trap and they're not expecting a sniper, that's a different scenario. So, and then I will make that roll because I want to create that tension. I want to create the surprise. The minute I say make a notice roll, I have taken the surprise away from a trap.
Okay, so
again, this is not a hard.
But now you're taking
rule.
the tension. If you're rolling for them, they don't know.
Yeah, there's no tension created by you rolling. And also, Savage Worlds is a game that has what's called a Benny economy. And by not letting them choose when they can spend their bennies, you're actually manipulating the way that the game is played. You're sort of changing the rules of how things are played.
Get in that car.
Pardon me?
Well, if I go make a notice, you tell me to make a notice roll. Okay, and I fail it, and then you go, and I go, I think I forgot my cell phone. I'm going to walk back. You're going to know, buddy, you walking in the car.
Right.
You've taken away my choice.
No, I haven't.
When
You're wrong.
Time stops. He decided when the time stops.
Yeah,
okay.
The player that is in the game, the guy that's in the game walking towards the car is not the same person that's playing the character. The guy playing the character, or the character in the game is walking towards the car. He's the one that is making the roll. If he fails, things happen to him. Things don't happen to the guy that's sitting there. And this is why you need to explain this is how the game's played. You're basically saying that this guy's going to be like, I'm going to go get a bagel, and immediately I would stop and be like, why the would your player character go get a bagel all of a sudden?
Well,
hold on a second. Wait. That is called metagaming, Mr. Conte. Your player is metagaming, and it just I don't know why it just hit me in the head.
Spending, that's what I said earlier. But spending a Benny is metagaming too. But the point I wanted to make is that from the moment someone rolls the dice until the GM narrates or someone narrates, the time has stopped.
Mm-hmm.
You're not taking any actions during that time until I say what happened according to the die roll. You can't do anything. Time stopped.
You're not interacting with the character in game. You're interacting with the person at the table, right? And then there needs to be a specific line between those two people. So the character in game wouldn't go get a bagel because he doesn't have any knowledge of there being anything wrong with the scenario unless he passes. And if he's got a D12, he has a greater chance of succeeding. But what you're saying is that he's just going to immediately metagame, and you don't want to stop him from metagaming. You want to let him continue to meta, or you don't want to be involved in that. But you should teach people not to metagame because it's lame sauce.
Well, no, it's not metagame. Like I said, it's just the time. It stopped. We just keep repeating each other now, and we're stalling. We're
circular.
Saying the same thing over. A couple things I wanted to mention too. There's the surprise rules on page 108 that might apply to that, because if you have the Hellfrost bestiary, they have pretty good rules for traps. They're the ones that addresses it, and basically it's that traps act on their own initiative cards, and if you fail your surprise roll, they begin their round on hold, and they gain the drop on you. So that way there's I guess it's more structured that way, so you can look at it that way. And there's also another supplement from Misfit Studios called 10 bestiary 10 fantasy traps, sorry. And with that one, it's basically the same thing, but traps also have like a die type in fighting or shooting or whatever. Hellfrost bestiary too, and I don't like that part because that could be a failed trap. Like, oh, never mind, that trap didn't hit you with the dart that was about to poison you because it failed that roll. So that's a couple more things to look at if people want more ideas on how to handle the traps. But I think it was an interesting discussion. It was basically a lot more arguing than I expected. People that said that I had no idea how to handle traps, but what I'll say is that you're both wrong. All right. You want to do the contact info, Gary?
No, let Paris do it.
Damn, I failed my notice roll and fell into your trap.
Yeah.
That's right. Gary will do
Benny?
a
I want a
Patreon
Benny.
jingle instead.
Where's the Benny? So I'm doing the contact information.
Let her rip, bro.
Yeah.
All right. If you wish to contact the Wild Eye podcast and tell Gary or me how I got it wrong, please email us at thewildeye@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on Facebook, MeWe, and YouTube, the Wild Eye Podcast, on those various social media platforms. Then we're also on Nerds International Group on MeWe if you want to mingle with us, or even Twitter at #TheWildEye.
Missed the Patreon thing.
Oh, down the bottom. Oh, well, it's on the next page, man. That's not my fault. Or you can support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/thewildeye. And then you're going to put a really cool Patreon jingle in here with, is it going to be a sexy one again, Gary?
Mm-hmm. Sexy traps.
Sexy traps. Oh, man. I can't wait for that one.
Oh, yeah. It's that time again. Part of the show where we spread special Patreon love on all our patrons. In this sexy jingle, I'm creating special traps. Alan Bray, Bubbles, and Conrad Neubert, your trap is called Dirty Balls in the Face. You fall into a pit of dirty, slimy, sweaty balls that run up all over your face, and you sink to the bottom, never to be seen again. Corey Judd, Dan Brown, Daryl Cartier, getting wood. Walking down a dark alley, you trigger a large wooden log that swings out and impales you. You're dead. Frank Turfler, Gilda Shardlingenstrad, and Jan Yetmar, Lubin Slider. This is a special trap where you fall into a greased tube just big enough to fit you, and you slide faster and faster and faster down the pipe until it splits into 2 smaller pieces, and so do you. Human baloney. Jan Schonheim, John Peterson, and Carl Kiesler. The toe tickler. You step onto a false floorboard that breaks away, revealing lacerating blades that cuts off your toes. Tickle, tickle. Kevin Stanley, Manuel Sams, and Mr. Stagg. The worst trap. In the center of this room is a plate of German sausage. Get it? Worst sausage? You eat my meat and love it so much that when you finish the plate, a precious sensitive switch releases a giant block to crush you. And you're so full you get squished. My meat's deadly. Malgwin, Noople Duple, Patrick Greenlaw, and Perry Chalmers. I gave you crabs. This room has a single flimsy rope bridge for you to cross, and beneath it, giant crabs. Pinch, pinch. Paris Conte, I made you a trap, but you just turned and went and got a bagel. You live. Ray Asteria, Scott Marchand Davis, and Sean Richer. This little trap is called Jump on My Stump. You open the door to a room with 4 pillars, and as you jump onto the first one, it is lubed up and you fall to your death. The second is a regular one and you're feeling okay. The third crumbles under your weight as you land on it, killing another one of you. And the last, it's invisible from the landing spot up, and you go face first into my stump. That was a big one. Stefan Dragonspawn, Sid the Squid, Zovia RPG maps. I got one called the Hero Sandwich. No, it's not a 3-way. Get your mind out of the gutter, you sickos. The walls of this room close in and slowly squish you till you explode like an overheated pizza pop. Uncle J. Raz, Matt Stock, and Rob Towell. Everybody loves a golden shower. You find an open treasure chest filled with gold, and as you pick it up, it sets off an explosion that projects coins through your bodies at deadly, amazing speeds. I bet you wish it was something else right now, sickos. And lastly, Andy Howell, Emmanuel Pabst, and Brian Casa. I got a special trap I like to call the doggy style door. A small door at the base of a larger door is the only way farther into the dungeon. You need to crawl through to the other side, but when you get halfway through, the door clamps down on you and interdimensionally portals your lower half without pants into a cave of lonely ogres. Sorry. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your continued Patreon patronage.
Good stuff, guys. It was nice to hang out with you again and hear all your great ideas. I liked it. I hope people find value in this. So this is Eric saying, Paris is wrong.
Wow, stiff.
This is Paris saying, do it your way, man. I do it my way, you do it your way. Neither of us are wrong. Just whatever works at your table.
You're wrong.
You're wrong.
I'm wrong.
And this is Gary saying, keep your pants on, keep it fun. Thanks, everybody. We're out.
Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.